Good morning and welcome everyone to the 5th Annual Horseshoe Crab Festival. Thank you all so much for joining us virtually this morning. We're so excited to spend the next hour and a half with you all just sharing a little bit about horseshoe crabs and why they're so important to us and also to birds and our ecosystem. My name is Danielle Sherman. I'm from the New York City Audubon Society. I'll be joined today by some of my colleagues. So if you need any help this morning or have any questions, just put them in the chat and we'll try to give you a hand there. We have so many exciting virtual events coming up in the next few weeks. This Tuesday, we have a nature forum that we're co-hosting for New York City mayoral candidates focused on nature and equity. We have on Wednesday our spring fundraiser, Cooper in Conversation, which features CNN anchor Anderson Cooper and our very own Chris Cooper. And last but certainly not least, on May 26th, we are co-hosting a talk with Hudson River Audubon featuring Dr. Scott Edwards, whose bike ride across America was recently covered in Audubon magazine. So I'm going to put links to sign up for those in the chat, but you can also check those out on newyorkcityaudubon.org for more information. But before we get started with our live portion that we'll have in just a little bit, I just want to share 2 videos from our festival partners, the National Park Service at Gateway's National Recreation Area and the American Littoral Society and Jamaica Bay Rockaway Parks Conservancy. We're going to set the stage and visit a very special corner of New York City, just a wonderful place that horseshoe crabs call home. So here we go.
Off the east coast of North America, you'll find a place with a vast network of marsh islands, meandering waterways, breathtaking ocean beaches, and boundless meadowlands. But to get here, you can drive or bike, take the subway, bus, and even the ferry. Gateway National Recreation Area is spread across Brooklyn, Queens, and Staten Island in New York, and Sandy Hook in New Jersey. More than 9 million people visited last year alone, but for a long time, Gateway looked a lot more like this. So how did we turn all of that into a national park? To answer that, we have to go back in time. Oh, sorry, that's too far. Okay, here we go. When the Dutch arrived in New York Harbor, the Canarsie and Munsee Lenape people had already been here for thousands of years, and it was one of the most ecologically diverse places on the planet. Whales, dolphins, seals, and hundreds of other species all called it home. The Dutch pushed out the native peoples, then the British took it from them. 112 years later, the United States of America claimed its independence. All the while, forts, factories, airports, resorts, and landfills replaced marshes, forests, and fields. By the 1900s, New York Harbor was almost lifeless. But instead of continuing to overlook these vulnerable areas or converting them all into dumps or ports, the National Park Service stepped in 1972 and converted almost 27,000 acres into parks. They conserved tracts of pristine land, preserved historic sites, and restored damaged ecosystems by planting native species that the animals like to eat. And soon, they started coming back. So when you're doing this, they're probably doing that. And when you do this, they're doing it too. But we need everybody's help to keep Gateway National Recreation Area healthy, clean, and safe for them, but also for us. Because no matter what you like to do, you can do it at Gateway.
Hi, I'm Don Reapy, the Jamaica Bay Guardian for the American Littoral Society. And today we're driving south on Cross Bay Boulevard through Broad Channel to a beach called American Ballfield Beach, which is part of the Jamaica Bay Wildlife Refuge. It's May 20th, which is the peak time for horseshoe crab migration in Jamaica Bay. It's springtime, it's coming on the high tide, and it's time for all the horseshoe crabs to come up and lay their eggs on the shoreline, the annual mating ritual of the horseshoe crabs. It's one of our keystone iconic animals in the bay, very important again ecologically and medically and educationally. Give me a horseshoe crab and I have the attention of kids in the school. So what does this remind you of? What does it look like to you?
Looks like a giant cockroach.
Looks like a giant cockroach. What do you think, Mary? What is it?
Feet look like a lobster.
Yeah, it's got feet sort of like a lobster, you know.
Thinking about like a stingray maybe because of like the long tail.
A stingray, okay. But it's actually, although it's called a horseshoe crab, it's not really a crab. It's more closely related to scorpions and spiders and dates back in the fossil records over 400 million years. So this living dinosaur, as some people call it, predates the dinosaurs. And this is a very old individual. You see all the barnacles growing on it. And he's got a community of bryozoans. This little patch in there. There's lots of little animals all living in a colony. So it's a whole living community that travels around the bay. I'll take him. It's the best way to hold them. Never hold them by the tail. Hold them by the front. They can't really get. Large compound eye here and here. Like an insect, many facets. They can detect motion. Two little eyes up in the front here. You can see where they're going. And then they have light sensitive receptor cells on their tails, underneath them, so they can tell which way is up. So one of the major threats to this crab is over-harvesting by the conch and eel industry. what they do is they use the larger females and will chop them up and use them as bait. Apparently that is very attractive to eels and conch. Of course, another major threat is shoreline development. As more and more of our shorelines become bulkheaded or actually flooded by higher tides, that will not allow the crab to nest there anymore. So the future is problematic for this crab. But there's a lot of interest right now and a lot of awareness by the public and interest in protecting these crabs. So we're trying to do everything we can. It's important that we educate the public about the value of the horseshoe crab and get them involved. I think once they learn about this fascinating animal, they're on board and trying to help protect it and preserve it in the bay. Some of the things you can do are if you see people poaching them or damaging them, hitting them, alert one of the rangers at the refuge.
Hi, everyone. So after that video, we are going to go right to the beach where we have our partners from the American Littoral Society and Jamaica Bay Rockaway Parks Conservancy. They are live out there with the horseshoe crabs. We have Alex Zablocki and Don Reapy with us, and they're going to help us learn a little bit more about this species. Alex, take it away.
Danielle, thanks so much. Thanks to New York City Audubon for running the tech today. And thank you everyone for joining us. We are here in Broad Channel. We are also on Facebook Live. Here's Alexandra from the American Littoral Society. And you're here today to experience horseshoe crabs in person live from Jamaica Bay. And we're here with the oldest inhabitants of Jamaica Bay, the horseshoe crab, and also our friend, Don Reapy. So I'm going to turn it over now to Don.
Hey, welcome everyone to the 5th Annual Horseshoe Crab Festival here in downtown Broad Channel on lovely Oldfield Beach here at the south end of Broad Channel, right near the Rockaway Bridge. A lovely beach here, except for maybe that old remnants of an old pier over there. And what we have here are just hundreds of horseshoe crabs. Amazing. I was here yesterday. There were only a few. I thought maybe it's going to be good. But a lot of it has to do with water temperature. So if the water temperature is 60 degrees or more, that's when they really come in. So we're assuming water temperature is close to that right now, which is good. And the crab is starting to come ashore. So they come ashore during the high tides, at the new moon and the full moon, but not always right around, but in greatest numbers around those times. Because that ensures that the tides are going to be high up there. They come up on the edge of the high tide, lay their eggs, and then they go out again. And a couple of weeks later, from 2 weeks to a month, the eggs will hatch out with the next super high tide. And all those little tiny, perfect replicas of the tailless of the horseshoe crab will go out and become part of the zooplankton, soup here that feeds everything else in the bay. And well, we're not seeing a lot of shorebirds yet. It's a little early. I think the shorebirds are coming in starting next week. So the next really good, the full moon should be a really peak time. And we expect to see lots of red knots, hopefully, the endangered shorebird that relies on the horseshoe crab eggs. And they have to actually eat voraciously. And they double their body weight before they can make their trek north to the tundra where they breed. But let's look at some of these critters. Here's a little guy right here. The smaller ones are males, okay? So the male horseshoe crab is about half the size. We'll get a female too. And they're interesting for many things, right? Number one, they are a living dinosaur. Actually, they predate the dinosaurs and are found back in the fossil records over 400 million years. That's even before I was born. Close before. So if you look at them, this is a perfect design. A nice little hard kite shell, like a little tank. compound eyes, like insect eyes, with many facets. So they also have little eyes in front. They have light sensitive receptor cells on the tail and interior. So they know where they are at all times, and they can detect motion, right? They also have, I'm sure it can detect pheromones. When the females are laying the eggs, that will bring in even more of the males around. And you'll see them in tandem. Usually the male is attached to the female. As she goes around the bay, he'll be there to fertilize them. But sometimes you'll have 6 and 7 males all around the female. That is even greater insurance that they'll be fertilized. But let's go around and look at some of these guys. The tide's coming up still. We have a nice cluster right at the edge over there. Let's look at that. Let me get a big picture.
And Don, we have to watch where we step, right? We have quite a few horseshoe crabs out here
All
today.
around us.
The water is nice and clear here today in Jamaica Bay. We are in Broad Channel, at Broad Channel American Park in the ball fields. And this is the spot that was featured in the video you just saw that we filmed about 2 years ago, and has historically been the place where we've done the Horseshoe Crab Festival in person. Today we'll be joined in person starting at 11:30 to show some folks the horseshoe crab fly.
They can live out of water for quite a while. They breathe through gills here, gill flaps, and they can even dig down in the sand as they do in winter. So they can live in low oxygen water. The only thing they need salt water. They need a good salinity. So the optimum breeding temperature or breeding salinity for the horseshoe crab is 20 to 30 parts per thousand. In the bay here, it's about 23 parts per thousand. All right. So you get up to 36, that's the open ocean coming in from there. But this guy also has some, well, first of all, identifying a male. The male's first 2 claws are what they call little boxing gloves, or these hooks. That's where they hang on to the back of the female as it traps around. The other claws used for digging, and they feed on a lot of marine organisms in the muds. You know, little seed plants and oysters and marine worms and so on. But, and the mouth is over here. They will grind up the food. And notice, you know, I'm not afraid of this animal. When I was a kid, I thought this was a poison snake. And believe it or not, kids today still think that. But it's not. It's just a calcium tail. It's a rudder, helps them steer. Or if they get flipped over, they can right themselves. This guy has some hitchhikers, little slipper shell. So the slipper shells will catch themselves. He also got a little colony of bryozoa. I don't know if you can see it. That's us here. Still, a little gray patch. Well, if you look at that closely, it's tiny, tiny little dots. But that's a whole colony of little animals, bryozoa, that's living on the horseshoe crab. So this, you know, this is a community. We have the barnacles.
So if there's any questions, please leave them in the chat. Alex, are there any questions on Facebook coming in?
Actually, well, first I have a phone information about the time.
Hey, Mickey Barber. Mickey's the expert. We miss you, Mickey. So,
And also a question from Donald saying, are there in shells at homes or is it part of the body? The shells, are they, are they part of the body or are they separate?
the shell?
The little slipper shell.
Oh, no, that's separate. That's a separate animal.
Yeah.
That's Clepidula cornicata. That little slipper shell. But we're going to look at a nice cluster over here because I want you to see a big female. So here we have females juggling. Size of the female related to the male. And look at all the slipper shells on this big female. Look, these attached. The female is really dumb right now. So the females will dig down about 6 inches down, lay big clusters. Throughout the whole day, they lay billions of eggs. And those nutrient-rich eggs are what everybody feeds on. All the shorebirds that depend on it, that are migrated. The red knot for example, travels all the way to Brazil, non-stop to Delaware Bay, Jamaica Bay. So Jamaica Bay is a smaller center than Delaware. Delaware Bay is the epicenter for the horseshoe crab in the United States, right? The horseshoe crabs, the farther south you go, they get smaller. I've been in Florida, so this might be a female, tiny, all the way in Florida. You go north up to Maine, they also get smaller. So they're bigger and more numerous right here in the mid-Atlantic, especially Delaware Bay and Jamaica Bay.
Don, we have a question. When
Yes.
do the eggs get fertilized?
Right now, so you can see what's happening. Females dug in. As she lays the eggs, they are depositing sperm, which will wrap down into the egg mass and fertilize.
And Don, someone's asking about horseshoe crab monitoring.
Yes.
Do we want to take a look at one of the horseshoe crabs over there? We
Well,
can
we
talk.
found tagging reports. Some groups are tagging them. The big research has been going on in Delaware Bay. Find out where they go, how long they live. They figure they live on up to maybe 20 years. So the first few years of life, they shed their skin, they shed the skin. What the crab does is when it's ready to grow, takes in excess water, and the water pressure splits the shell in the front, the crab looks out, and it's a little bigger. And they do that for the first 10 years of their life. After that, they're adults, they're sexually mature, they don't shed their shell after that. That's why all these crabs here have things growing on them, all the barnacles.
So people might find the molten shells on the shoreline when they come fishing or they're out at the beach.
If you find a shell and you look at the front and it's an open flap, that is a cast off. If not, it could be a dead one too.
So someone's asking, they're laying their eggs in the water, not higher up on the beach. Can you elaborate on that, Don?
Yeah,
What's
in
happening
the
here?
water. They're laying their eggs right here at the high tide area. So when the tide goes out, they get a chance to dry out a little bit. And then 2 weeks later, at the next really high tides, 2, 3 weeks later, so they will hatch out. The action of the water on the eggs will force the eggs to open up and the little ones come out.
And that was happening here last night, right? Probably or today.
Yeah, we have eggs up there.
So let's see the shoreline here where eggs might have been laid earlier.
These little depressions might be where they had. Find some eggs. Yes. I see eggs. I see eggs down here. Getting down, I see a few. So that might be usually a little ball of eggs that lay. This is not a good example, but these little tiny, you can see little ones here. Those are eggs. Those tiny little green little dots, other than the baby here on my finger. Tiny cluster of eggs.
Hard to see on the Zoom, but we'll
Yes.
post this on our social media later.
Right.
And yeah.
Right. And in some areas down in Delaware Bay, the whole shoreline is covered with eggs. Sometimes, almost a foot deep of eggs. There's so many eggs out there.
And Don, when these hatch, where do they go? Do they go immediately into the ocean
Immediately
or?
into the ocean. They're part of the zooplankton, or tiny little animals living out there. And they will grow. And the first year, they'll shed their little shells a few times. I think they said 6 or 8 times the first year. And after the first year, they're going to be that big, second year, third year. So they grow in stages, and each time they shed their shell. But they stay in the water. They don't come on land until they're sexually mature and going to lay eggs. And it's only this time of year. Only in the springtime do they come up here.
How can we tell how old they are?
It's hard to tell. We just know that they are over 10 or 12 when you get a huge female. And I'm told they live to be about 20. So I don't know how exact it is. Oh, look at this
And we have a
over here.
question asking, how long do they stay on the shoreline?
Oh, they come up several times. The female will come up and lay several clusters of eggs. And they might come up in different areas. So they scatter it out. You don't want to have all your eggs in one bed. Right.
And about what month?
Sorry?
How long do they stay? Like, until what month about?
Oh, the peak time is usually from mid-May to mid-June. And peak during the full moon cycles, the new moon cycles, that's the biggest numbers. But I've seen them a few even in summertime, even as late as September, I've seen a couple up here. So there's always strays. You want to have different strategies. So again, it's good to have if there was a disaster at this time, you might lose the whole population.
And Don, we have about a minute or two left. Do we want to walk over this way and maybe we'll see if we see that
Yeah.
tag? Or you want to go over here?
Yeah, let's look at this big cluster.
Okay.
And,
If there's any more questions, please leave them in the chat. Oh, okay.
Hello, everybody. You know what these are? Yeah, they're incredible, right? You know the difference between the males and females? Yeah, they're all right up here. And they're really totally harmless. They can't actually kill you. So, that's very important. And what do we have here? This is a female. Doesn't have just the size of itself. But this one is tagged. All right. So the Fish and Wildlife Service is looking for information about the crabs to know where they migrate to, for example, and where they, if this one is found here and reported, then maybe next year over at Sandy Hook, New Jersey, we know they migrate back and forth throughout the harbor. Yeah, she's full of eggs. Big female. I think she got a pinch on.
Don, how is the population up there at Sandy Hook? Someone's asking in the chat.
Sandy Hook, I don't know. I know Delaware Bay. You go to south part of New Jersey, on the bay side. That's where the big clusters of the crabs and the shorebirds are. We get a nice grouping here.
Okay. So Don, we're gonna have to go. Anything else you want to add? And we're gonna send it back to Danielle. Anything else you want to add?
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you. Thank you, Don. Thank you, Alex. It's so good to see the beach today. It's really nice. All right. Well, that was a lot of fun. And I know a lot of you had tons of questions for Don, but the good news is that even though we couldn't get to all of your questions, we have two of my colleagues here today, Aurora and Caitlin, and they are both have been working with horseshoe crabs for some time. So Aurora will try to get to some of your questions if you leave them in the Q&A or the chat. And we also have Caitlin here, who is our senior conservation biologist at New York City Audubon. She is going to tell us a little bit more about the importance of horseshoe crabs and the conservation issues they face. So she'll be taking questions at the end of her presentation. So you can leave those questions for her. And then again, if we don't get to all of them, which we probably won't, Aurora will be here to help you out as well. So take it away, Caitlin.
Great. Thank you so much, Danielle. I'm assuming everybody can hear me and can see my screen. Are we good to go?
Yeah, you're all set, Caitlin.
Great, thank you. All right, so yeah, I am here to talk to you as a representative of New York City Audubon, we're an organization that works to protect birds and their habitat in the 5 boroughs of New York City through advocacy, education, and conservation. And yes, while I am here to talk to you about horseshoe crabs, I am a bird biologist and we're a bird conservation organization. So I want to actually start my presentation with a little shorebird quiz. So I would love it if anyone who wants to participate could take a look at the birds that you see on your screen right now and type into the chat what birds you see here. I would love it if anyone, even if it's a totally wild guess, let me know, what birds you see. Piping plover in the chat. Ruddy turnstone. Let's see if we can get a few more. Red knot. Let's get a couple more guesses here. Black-bellied plover. Sanderling. Yeah, so this is actually, I love your guesses. I love that everyone is taking really good guesses. This kind of is exactly what I was going for. Shorebirds are some of the hardest birds to identify. They perplex some birders. And right now is peak, or we're starting to get into peak shorebird migration. So the birds that you can see on the screen in the top left-hand corner is the ruddy turnstone. The top right-hand corner is the dunlin. You can tell it's a dunlin because its bill sort of droops down. So that's your key field mark. On the bottom left-hand corner is a sanderling. So if you've ever seen the movie, the Pixar short film Piper, that's the bird that that cartoon is based on. In the middle is the semi-palmated sandpiper, and on the bottom right is the red knot. And so the red knot, all of these birds do eat horseshoe crabs or horseshoe crab eggs during migration, but the one that has the strongest connection with the horseshoe crabs is the red knot. Red knots spend their winters, or what we consider winter, down in South America, in various areas of South America that are highlighted on this map in blue. This is a map created by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And every year during the spring migration, they migrate all the way up, essentially from the very bottom of our hemisphere to the very top of our hemisphere to breed. This is an incredibly long journey. Imagine like just running across the US over the course of like 5 days, and how much energy and how much rest you would need in order to do that. So these birds are doing like really incredible things physiologically. And they do, like Don said, they need to stop. They need to double their body weight when they stop, and eat and refuel and have enough energy to continue migration. And scientists have shown that the red knots really do rely on horseshoe crab eggs to do that. And the majority of the red knots and the horseshoe crab eggs, so this, I know it was a little hard to see when Don scooped those eggs up out of the sand. So here's a close-up picture of what the horseshoe crab's eggs look like. And these are essentially like the perfect nutrition. They're easy to digest. They're very fatty. They give these birds the energy that they need. And so the majority of these birds are stopping over in Delaware Bay, south of us, where you can see in the picture on the right, there are just thousands and thousands of horseshoe crabs lining the beaches. And then of course, thousands and thousands of red knots eating them. We are considered sort of a secondary stopover site. So we do have high numbers of horseshoe crabs, especially in Jamaica Bay and on the south shore of Long Island, and we do get red knots moving through as well. And Jamaica Bay is a really critical place because you can imagine if something was to happen in Delaware Bay and the birds, the timing wasn't right because there are some issues with timing of horseshoe crabs and migration. They need these secondary sites as sort of a backup site to make sure that they can continue. That is why we at New York City Audubon really care about the horseshoe crab, other than the fact that they're just super cool in their own right and deserve to be conserved. They are extremely important to the ecosystem and to birds. So horseshoe crabs are currently classified as vulnerable by the IUCN. There was significant overharvesting of the crabs in the 80s and the 90s, and some regulations have been put in place to help reduce take or harvesting of horseshoe crabs, especially in Delaware Bay. And some populations have been stabilized. However, what we're seeing is that even in areas where the number of crabs have been stabilized, they're finding far fewer eggs on the beaches. And so scientists are still kind of trying to figure out what's happening. And even a stabilized population, we're talking from 1 million crabs spawning on the beaches down to just a couple of 100,000. So this is still a significant decrease. And what we really want is not just to stabilize horseshoe crab populations, but actually increase horseshoe crab populations. And of course, these animals are very much affected by climate change. Their spawning is affected by the temperature of the water. So the water temperature basically has to be a certain temperature for them to come on and spawn. And as our climate changes and water temperatures change, we're concerned that there might become a disconnect about when the shorebirds are migrating and when the horseshoe crabs are coming up and spawning, which can be a problem for those animals. So the two reasons that horseshoe crabs are harvested right now, the first one is biomedical use. So horseshoe crab blood, they are the blue bloods, if you will, because they have copper in their blood instead of iron in their blood like we do. Horseshoe crab blood is very important. It's actually worth about $60,000 per gallon. And horseshoe crabs are bled for their blood so that, and I apologize, it looks like my photo is overlapping my text here, but horseshoe crabs are harvested for their blood because it contains a compound called it's limulus amoebocyte lysate, or LAL, which is what I'm going to say from now on because it's hard for me to pronounce that. LAL is a compound that reacts with bacterial endotoxin, and it's actually just part of the horseshoe crab's ancient immune system. So essentially, whenever something comes in and might infect the horseshoe crab, the blood coagulates into a solid mass around it, keeping that whatever that endotoxin is from affecting the horseshoe crab. So essentially, humans realized that LAL could be used to test for contaminants in biomedical supplies and pharmaceuticals and things like that. So if you have gotten your COVID vaccine, thank a horseshoe crab, because its blood was used to make sure that that vaccine was safe to go into your arm. Unfortunately, as we can go back and look at this picture, the horseshoe crabs are harvested and bled, and they are returned to the water after they bleed about 30%, I believe, of their blood. But mortality, which is self-reported by the companies, is around 3 to 30%, which is a huge range. So we don't really know what it is. And scientists are starting to realize that there might be long-term effects of bleeding on the horseshoe crabs, like that they aren't able to get right back to spawning, or they, aren't able to do their typical migration. And so it's possible that these crabs that are bled are then not reproducing as well, after they're bled. So we're still learning more about that. There is a synthetic alternative. So if you want to read more about this, and I can't cover it all in the time I have, but there's a great article in The Atlantic called The Last Days of the Blue Blood Harvest. I highly recommend this article. It's a great overview of the entire situation. But there is, it's called RFC, which is a synthetic alternative, but there are some blockades to using it, and the FDA, or the US Pharmacopoeia, which is a nonprofit that does a lot of, the FDA outsources a lot of their work to, hasn't approved RFC. We actually expected that was going to happen last year, and it did not, unfortunately. And as you can imagine, when we have things like the COVID vaccine that needs to be developed, not only do we not want to over harvest horseshoe crabs, but we also shouldn't be relying on a natural resource that could run out in order to test our vaccines. It would be much better to have this synthetic alternative. And so advocacy groups are trying to pressure the FDA into approving this synthetic alternative, and it just hasn't happened yet. Likely not because of safety concerns, because it has been shown to be just as effective as LAL, but it seems to be possibly there's some political things going on. But I highly recommend this article if you'd like to learn more. The other reason horseshoe crabs are harvested is for the bait fisheries. Like Don said, they are harvested to be used as bait for eel and whelk. They essentially capture female horseshoe crabs and quarter them and put them into traps. Certain areas, horseshoe crab harvesting is not permitted, but it is easy to poach them off the beaches, especially when they're all up there spawning. There is a synthetic alternative that's being tested now. This is a collaboration between University of Delaware and DuPont, and it's been being tested on Long Island, hopefully this year. And this bait uses just 1/16 of a horseshoe crab compared to half a horseshoe crab for the same amount of bait. So we're hoping that this could be tested, and if it's shown to be as effective and it can be just as inexpensive, that fishermen will be willing to use that instead. So what are we doing at New York City Audubon to help? The main program that we participate in is a community science program. It is the New York Horseshoe Crab Monitoring Network. It's run by the Cornell Cooperative Extension and also the DEC, who funds the program. It is a network of horseshoe crab monitoring across, I think they're actually up to about 30 sites all over New York State, which, the coastal New York State is essentially New York City and Long Island. So there are sites all over. We monitor horseshoe crabs at 4 sites in New York City as part of this network. So we have volunteers who come out with us. They go out, and this is my former coworker, Nikki, on the left here, in her first experience on the beach with a horseshoe crab, and some volunteers on the right holding a quadrat, which is a clipboard and their headlamps. We go out late at night often, and we count horseshoe crabs on the beaches to keep track of their spawning. This is sort of what it looks like. We're sometimes out there on Thursday. We were out until about 1 o'clock in the morning doing this. We put a quadrat down and we count the number of crabs and we take samples and essentially get an index of spawning activity. We have about a decade of data at these sites, and Cornell has analyzed these data and is finding that Jamaica Bay is actually a source population from the horseshoe crabs across Long Island, which is very cool. So our beaches in New York City are very important. We also do tag the crabs. So these are pictures of two folks tagging crabs. We actually just drill into the side of the carapace and punch the tag in. Here is another picture. We measure the crabs, and we also take some data on the condition of their carapace or their shell. And these tags help us learn more about where horseshoe crabs are moving between sites. This is how they were able to find that Jamaica Bay was a source population. So this program is sort of critical in keeping tabs on our population. The data are used for species status assessments, management decisions, and advocacy. This is a news article I just took a quick screenshot of where they use these data to close down beaches during the peak spawning. Sorry. More. We also publish scientific publications. So we have one out that is the effect of beach nourishment in Jamaica Bay on horseshoe crab activity. We found that actually at Plum Beach, after Sandy, they did a beach nourishment project and more horseshoe crabs were spawning after the beach nourishment. So it improved the habitat. And we just came out with a paper on the relationship between spawning crabs and egg densities and made some recommendations that managers can use across the entire range of the horseshoe crab to try to assess populations and make recommendations for habitat suitability. So how can you help with horseshoe crabs? Well, you can, like Don said, send in any tags that you find. So look for a tag, a button tag that looks like this. Take a picture of it so that you can report it. It's fws.gov/crab tag is the website, and you can report it, and they send you a little pewter pin of a horseshoe crab the first time you report, which is very cool. This is what to do if you see a tagged crab. Take a picture, don't pick it up by the tail, note where you are and the date and the time of the sighting and the status of the crab. And yeah, fws.gov/crab tag. Another way you can help is by flipping over horseshoe crabs. So this is a video I made. I'm going to talk over my own video. Whoops, if I can get it to play, because the sound is very quiet.
So you might be wondering how you
so if you find a horseshoe crab that is upside down on the beaches, you can flip over the upturned horseshoe crab. So they have a really hard time flipping themselves back over, and it's a really easy way you can just make sure they have a chance to continue reproducing. So this is a crab that I found that was flipped upside down. Basically, they fold themselves in half and they try to flip themselves back over, and they often can't do it themselves. So don't grab it by the telson, because you can break it off, and that's sort of the only opportunity they have to flip themselves over. And grab it by the front. And grab it by the edges.
And then if you're far away from the water,
walk it down to the water.
Up to the edge of the water, and then put it in the water.
And then put it in the water, facing downhill and facing into the water. You might want to put it a little deeper than I actually put this one in if it's already dried out. And it should just go right back into the water. So that's one way you can help horseshoe crabs. You can also help horseshoe crabs and shorebirds by sharing the shore, by not taking your dogs to the beach and letting them run around off leash, by not going behind symbolic fencing, and just by being careful on the beaches when you're around birds and crabs. You can be an advocate for horseshoe crabs, participate in public comment periods on legislation. And if you want to keep up to date with opportunities to do that, you can sign up to be an avian advocate on our website at nycaudubon.org. Just search NYC Audubon Avian Advocates. We send newsletters out about monthly, and if there's any opportunity for you to support legislation like horseshoe crab harvesting restrictions and things like that, we will email you and let you know. We're also part of this Horseshoe Crab Recovery Coalition. So if you search horseshoecrabrecovery.org, I believe is the website, or the Horseshoe Crab Recovery Coalition, you can find opportunities to take action, resources, and all kinds of information. This is not just New York City, but a range-wide effort to protect horseshoe crabs. And with that, I would love to take some of your questions. Thanks so much for joining us, especially to the Cornell Cooperative Extension and the DEC and all of the volunteers who have helped us over the years. And you can learn more about the New York Horseshoe Crab Network if you're, say, out on Long Island or elsewhere and you want to get involved at nyhorseshoecrab.org. So yeah, I guess I will take any questions. Let's see.
Let's see. Okay, so if you have any questions for Caitlin, put them in the Q&A. I see a few of you have, so let's see. We have a couple of questions. This is interesting. Someone asked about their role in the ocean's ecosystem. Do we know much about that?
Yeah. So like I said, I'm not a horseshoe crab expert, but I do know a little bit about how important they are. So they will eat almost anything. They are detritivores, so they kind of eat decaying matter off the ocean floor. So imagine them as like the ocean vacuum. And we focus on their eggs as food for birds, but they are also food for crabs and other creatures. And horseshoe crabs themselves are food for birds, crabs, and other animals in the ocean. So they're very important, sort of a species that if they drop out, we're likely to see reductions in populations of other species and changes because of how important they are.
Great. Yeah, that's great. That's a great answer. Someone is asking, could you talk a little bit more about beach nourishment and what that actually entails?
Yeah, so beach renourishment is essentially, if you've ever seen like big barges digging sand up off the bottom of the ocean, you'll sometimes see it spraying. They collect sand and then they go to the beach and they spray sand all over the beach. Essentially, our beaches erode away, and that's natural for beaches. Beaches are supposed to erode and change, and they protect the shoreline. But humans have put structures near them that we want to protect if we don't want to wash away. And so because beaches erode, we have to keep building them back up. So beach renourishment, for example, after Sandy, the beach like got washed away and essentially water was up to the Belt Parkway. So in order to, at Plum Beach, so in order to protect the Belt Parkway, they had to build the beach back up. And we found that building the beach back up also provided good habitat for horseshoe crabs at Plum Beach.
Wonderful. And then we have a question, where do babies rest or do they go onward immediately?
Yeah, so horseshoe crabs are one of my very favorite like arthropods because they don't hatch into larvae that later develop. They just hatch as like teeny tiny little mini horseshoe crabs, which is very cute. And they hatch into the water and disperse immediately into the ocean. And as you can imagine, there are millions of them. So a lot of them just get eaten right away, but otherwise they just go into the ocean, they go down into the sand and they start living their lives as horseshoe crabs right away. It does take about 10 years of molting and to get to reproductive size though. So, you know, they're babies and then they go through a teenage state and then eventually they are the adults. So the ones we see spawning on the beaches are all at least 10 years old. These are adults, they've reached their terminal molt.
That's thank you so much for answering some of these questions. We actually have to move on, unfortunately, because we have a wonderful guest coming up next. However, everyone, Caitlin and Aurora are still going to be answering your questions that you left in the Q&A, so keep an eye over there. And I did see a question about you know, advocacy for horseshoe crabs and other, you know, things we can do to put political pressure. I'm going to put a link in the chat in a little bit for our avian advocates email newsletter that you can all sign up for. So that's a really great way that if we do have an action you can take for birds or horseshoe crabs or these other species of concern that we work with, that's where you'll find out about it. And you can hear about, you know, different things you can do, you know, to advocate for these animals. So thank you so much, Caitlin. And
thanks for having me.
yeah, it's great to have you. We are going to move on now. We have a little bit of a change of pace. We are going to have Rachel Swanson from New York Aquarium. She's joining us live. Rachel is going to be doing an interactive activity with horseshoe crabs. So if you have some paper or pencil, anything nearby, get ready for some horseshoe crab fun. And Rachel, go for it.
Awesome. Thanks, Danielle. Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel, and I am joining you all from the New York Aquarium in Coney Island in Brooklyn, where we love horseshoe crabs here. Behind me, you might see some rocks. We have a big touch tank back there where we keep some horseshoe crabs and some other animals. But I've actually taken some of the horseshoe crabs out so we can get a really close up look at them and also do some observational drawings. So if anyone wants to follow along, especially those younger folks in the audience, you might want to grab a few materials. You can grab some paper, you can grab a pencil, something to draw with, maybe some colored pencils if you want to add some colored pencils to your drawing, and some additional things if you want. Maybe something to measure with, like a ruler or a measuring tape, and then maybe a magnifying glass or something else to really get up close with our horseshoe crabs. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a horseshoe crab up close, and we are going to make some detailed observational drawings. Okay, I'm going to adjust my camera to show you the horseshoe crab I have here with me. And what I want you all to start doing first is just making some basic observations, right? I want you to really start to notice the basic shape of this animal, maybe any special features, maybe any special body parts you see, so that we can start thinking about our drawing. I know we've been looking at some different horseshoe crabs today out on the beach, and we've gotten some really great facts from Dawn and Caitlin. But let's look at this guy here and what we see. What I'm noticing right off the bat, right, of course, is their shell or their carapace, right? That nice rounded shape. I'm seeing that tail, that telson. I'm seeing maybe some spikes back here, some pointy things going on. I might see a little leg poking out towards the bottom. Okay, keep that in mind. And I'm noticing the color as well, right? So maybe a brownish color, sandy color, maybe even a little black or green. Okay, so now that we have a basic idea of the horseshoe crab, let's get our materials ready. Okay, so grab your paper, grab your pencil, and let's get started on our observational drawing. So the thing that you want to do first, my friends, is you want to write your name, write the date, come up with a title, and start sketching that basic outline of the horseshoe crab, right? Those basic body shapes that we just noticed. I can show you what I have so far. From my drawing so far, I added a title, I added my name, where I am at the aquarium, a date, and I just started to do the basic outline, the basic shape that I know the horseshoe crab is, just to get us started. So everyone who's following along at home, you can write your title, your name, your date, and start getting that basic outline. Okay, I'm going to go back to our horseshoe crab friend so we can have our inspiration here. Now let's see if we can start noticing some of those finer details. Okay, so maybe some of those bumps, some of those colors, some of those body parts that maybe Dawn or Caitlin were sharing earlier. We can see this horseshoe crab is moving around a lot, right? Crawling around, using those legs to crawl. Also trying to get up out of this container a bit too, right? The horseshoe crab does not live in this container all the time. It lives in that big tank behind me. So the horseshoe crab is moving around to try and figure out where it is, maybe trying to figure out how it could get back to its normal home. I'm also noticing sort of that hinge right here, right? Like we saw earlier, those horseshoe crabs can sort of fold in half. They can move those two parts of their shells. You can add that to your drawing. And we're starting to get a peek at what the horseshoe crab looks like underneath, right? The horseshoe crab is actually putting on a bit of a show for us here. showing us some of those legs. So if you want on your drawing to do a view from the underside, I definitely encourage that. What I'll actually do is I'll adjust my camera, pick the horseshoe crab up so we can really see that underside again, even though Dawn was showing us a bit earlier too. So here's the top of the horseshoe crab. You can get that good view of the color, the size of it as well for your drawing. There's that tail. And here's a view of the underside. So I definitely encourage, if you're making a drawing at home, to draw this view as well, because you can really see those legs, right? Those 10 legs that the horseshoe crab has. They have their mouth right there in the center, which Dawn showed us earlier, and their gills down here at the bottom as well. And you can see they're moving all around, right? Put it a little bit closer. And as we've learned today, we can see that this one's a male. This is a male horseshoe crab, because we can see they have those boxing gloves on their top leg there, those boxing glove shaped legs. So this is a male horseshoe crab. Okay, friends, so make sure you're adding all the details to your drawing there, all the things we've seen so far for the horseshoe crab. I'm going to move the camera back down so you can see. And we're seeing that he's not being very cooperative, is he? So maybe he got a little scared when I picked him up. I'm going to try to flip him back around. There you go, just like Caitlin showed us before. Okay, friends, so we have our basic outline. Hopefully you've added some of your details. And now it's time to add some labels to our drawings, right? Hopefully you have a good drawing going so far. I'll show you mine again. I'm wondering if you all can add some labels. Put some arrows to different body parts on the horseshoe crab, maybe pointing out the tail, which we know is called the telson, maybe pointing out those compound eyes, those two bumps that we see on the top, maybe pointing out some of these spikes on the side, maybe pointing out their hinge. You can also label all of those body parts underneath, that mouth, those legs, those gills, anything that you think other people might want to know about the horseshoe crab, or you might want to remember in the future when you go back to this drawing. So make sure you add all of those labels. And since I have my measuring tape here today, I thought we could even measure our horseshoe crab and add that to our drawing as well. So let's see, I'm going to measure our horseshoe crab from the tip of the tail to the top of the shell. Tip of the tail to the top of the shell, it's just about a foot long from the tip of the tail to the top of the shell, 12 inches, 1 foot long. You can add that to your drawing. And let's see the width. Just about 7 inches. So our horseshoe crab is 1 foot long, 7 inches wide. We can add that to our drawing as well. So hopefully, friends, you're starting to have a pretty complete drawing for your horseshoe crab with your title, with maybe some colors and some labels. And while you're adding those finishing touches, I would love to show you something else as well. So I'm actually going to put this horseshoe crab away, and I'm going to bring out another one, and then we can make some comparisons between these two horseshoe crabs. Okay, so we can wave goodbye to this horseshoe crab, and I'll bring out another one in just a moment. Okay, here's our second horseshoe crab. Oh, this one's also a little scared, maybe folding up a little bit like we saw earlier. You probably noticed that this one is a lot smaller than the other horseshoe crab we were just looking at. This horseshoe crab is younger than the first one. I'm not sure on the exact age of this horseshoe crab, but we do know that this one is definitely under 10 years old, right? Because they get to full grown to sexual maturity at 10 years old. So this one is definitely younger than 10. It is a lot smaller. And there's some other differences between these horseshoe crabs too, right? Not just the size. I'm noticing the color is a bit different on this one. So what you can all do, friends, if you wanted to add another drawing of this horseshoe crab, you can make it on a different piece of paper, maybe on the same piece of paper right next to the other one, right? It's going to be a lot smaller, maybe some different colors, and it's definitely going to be some different labels as well. So I'm going to grab our measuring tape again, measure this one. This one's just under 6 inches, about 5.5 inches long and 3.5 inches wide. So if you are adding this horseshoe crab to your drawing, you can add those width and length labels as well. I'm going to lift this horseshoe crab up too, so we can make some observations of it underneath. Right, so it has all the same body parts as the older horseshoe crab. Like Caitlin said before, when they hatch from their eggs, they just look like tiny horseshoe crabs, just smaller. But what I'm noticing about this one, this is a female horseshoe crab. It does not have those boxing gloves on the top leg. So we know that this is a female. So that is a great detail or label that you can add to your second drawing if you want. Excellent. One other difference between the older horseshoe crab and this younger one, their shell is a lot softer. It's very smooth, doesn't have a lot of those bumps on it as the older one did. And as we saw with Dawn earlier, a lot of those older ones get slipper snails on them or barnacles or other things like that. This one is very smooth, no bumps, nothing else growing on it. Excellent. So friends, hopefully by this point you have 2 finished horseshoe crab drawings. I'm going to show mine one more time. So again, remember we should have our title, our name, our date, our horseshoe crab drawing, and make sure to add all of those different labels to the different body parts, features, or adaptations that we've been learning about all day today. Excellent. Now I'm wondering, before I say goodbye and you will move on to the next activity, if there are any questions, any comments that people have. Feel free to put those in the chat or put them in the Q&A section. Any questions about the horseshoe crabs or about the aquarium, I'd be happy to answer them.
Hey, Rachel, I am not seeing any questions yet, but if they come up, oh, Kate, how many horseshoe crabs live at the aquarium? That's a great question.
Good question. Probably about 10 to 15. So sometimes it's hard to see them. A lot of them bury in the sand and hide at the bottom of the tank. So I never really see all of them at one time. But I would guess, yeah, probably 10 to 12, 10 to 15. And they're varying sizes, varying ages. Most of them are full grown, but we do have some smaller ones like the one we see here.
Great. And can you, I think you told us before how many legs they have, but could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, definitely. So the horseshoe crabs have 10 legs. Let me get out our bigger horseshoe crabs so we can really see those legs in more detail. So I'll put our little guy away. Okay. I'll adjust the camera again. So you can see they have 10 legs, 5 on each side. Their bottom leg is sort of like all splayed out, and they really use that bottom leg to sort of push themselves forward. The rest of the legs they'll use to crawl on the ocean floor. And they have 2 really small appendages up here that they'll use to help them eat and to get things into their mouth.
Oh my goodness. That's so cool. It's so cool that we can kind of just like see right in there. I love it.
Yeah, it's definitely a good view. You can really see the horseshoe crabs, see their mouths, see their legs working.
So active.
Yeah, very active today. They knew they were on camera.
Yes, exactly. Is the New York Aquarium open right now?
Yes, the aquarium is open. We are not at full capacity, so you do have to book tickets ahead of time for a certain day and time. But yes, we are open.
Wonderful. I'll have to get there myself sometime soon.
Definitely. Check out our horseshoe crabs. And like we've been mentioning this time of year, you can sometimes even see them on Coney Island Beach.
Good point. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Rachel. This was an absolute pleasure. And it was great to see you.
Yeah, thank you for having us. Thanks, everyone.
Take care. Okay, well, thanks again to Rachel and New York Aquarium for that wonderful segment. We have another activity for you now that you can do at home. This is an activity from the New Jersey Sea Grant Consortium called Build a Horseshoe Crab. It will be presented by Aiden Halpin in a video that he made. He's from Gateway National Recreation Area. You can do this activity at home too. In a little bit, I'll put a link in the chat so you can see the full instructions for the activity. And here we go. I will just share my screen. Okay.
Here are all the supplies you'll need to make your own horseshoe crab. 2 pieces of paper, a pair of scissors and some tape. Brass fasteners and paper clips can also be used optionally to make the horseshoe crab's tail spin all the way around. Lastly, you'll need your favorite type of coloring utensil. And that's it. We're ready to start building our very own horseshoe crabs. The first step is to print out our horseshoe crab outlines on our 2 pieces of paper. Step 2, we're going to color our horseshoe crabs. Step 3, cut out all 3 parts of your horseshoe crab: the prosoma, the abdomen, and the telson. Step 4, use your tape to attach the prosoma to the abdomen. This will give your horseshoe crab more flexibility and allow it to behave a bit more like the real thing. Step 5, attach the telson to the abdomen. This is where you can be using those brass fasteners or paper clips, but if you only have tape lying around, that works just as well. Just don't expect it to be rotating in a 360-degree way. For the last step, if you'd like for your model to be a little bit more 3D or have a little bit more texture, simply fold each side inwards, and voila, you've got yourself a horseshoe crab.
Alrighty, well, hopefully you all can make your own horseshoe crab at home, even if it isn't as feisty as the one that Rachel showed us earlier. Next up, Heather Feather and Valentina Gallup, the creators of the children's book Horseshoe Crab's Crown, would like us to go on a journey with them through time. Let's travel with Horseshoe Crab and her friends as they work together to uncover the moon and ultimately make the world a better place. Here we go.
Horseshoe Crab's Crown. Written by Heather Feather. Illustrated by Valentina Gallup. Dedicated to Acupora, Ao, and World Turtle for carrying the earth on their backs. In all of its days and all of its ways, the earth has seen many, many creatures. Some so much the same, you can retrace where their pathways once parted. Others so strange and striking, they leave you in lasting awe. Life can occur easily here on Earth in the ebb and flow of our seas, allowing creatures large and small to make their case for survival. But sometimes, ice or heat or cosmic collisions will reset these natural rhythms. 65 million years ago, eyes deep in the sand, horseshoe crabs slept, missing the asteroid that entered the Earth's atmosphere, forever changing the life that lived there. It stirred up so much sand and soil that no sky or sun could be seen. And Horseshoe Crab, awaking to unusual darkness, searched the skies with her 14 eyes, looking for the warm welcome of her moon. 10 legs took her to shore where large beasts had once wandered. Now only darkness reigned about her, and no matter how hard she swung her powerful telson, she could not move the clouds from the air. Back into the sea she wondered, what to do, what to do. How could Horseshoe Crab bring back her moon? With not much more to offer beyond the strength of her shell, off she went to find some help. Not long looking, she observed another creature who rolled with the underwater waves. Hey you, what to do? How do we uncover the moon? Opening only slightly, Mussel whispered, I can help, I can. I may not walk, I may not swim, but I can clean the darkness from the water, piece by piece. And using his byssus, a cluster of fine threads, Mussel affixed himself to the hard head of Horseshoe Crab. Their collective journey was only a few steps in when they heard a chorus of voices. Hello, hello, us too, said barnacles clustered only a few feet away. We can also filter the silt from the sea. They waved their feathery cirri until Horseshoe Crab crawled to them, and binding their bodies head first to the surface of her shell, they began doing their part, piece by piece, to uncover the moon. Patterns in the sand revealed woven pathways of creatures sliding along, leaving clean sand in their wake. However knotted these trails, Horseshoe Crab found her way through them and discovered Mud Snail eating debris. Mud Snail looked up without shame. One fish's trash is a mud snail's treasure. Would you? Could you help? We must uncover the moon, cried Horseshoe Crab. And without hesitation, Mud Snail joined the journey, each animal doing what they do best to uncover the moon, piece by piece, bit by bit. As the water became clearer, they saw a boisterous beast dragging his home behind him. Hermit Crab knocked on every shell and surface and slurped every substance off of every grain of sand. He exclaimed the earth's new beginning. You seek the moon, I see, he said with slender eyes. Mussel and barnacles will clear the water, and I will help Mud Snail clean the sand, but who will clean the air? Not entirely knowing, but feeling certain nonetheless, Horseshoe Crab assured Hermit Crab, the more we look, the more we'll find, piece by piece, bit by bit, little by little. And the marine friends moved ahead in the murk, with only their hope to guide them. The journey lasted mere minutes, or maybe even millions of years, for without the sun it was hard to tell the movement of days. But the creatures kept on until light began to creep through the clouds, revealing an oasis of green, waving and welcoming in the shallows.
We work together to uncover our moon, exclaimed Horseshoe Crab, excited for the promise of the planet. Eelgrass whispered its delight. We want this world to thrive. And with each green grass breath, the air became cleaner as oxygen entered the atmosphere. And through the sway of the eelgrass blades peeked a guiding friend from the past. Piece by piece, bit by bit, little by little, breath by breath, they had uncovered the moon. Gradually, the world became welcoming again to lingering life and all of its persistent creatures. The animals continued their journey for many more millions of years, watching and waiting for the moon to forever be a part of the patterns and cycles of our planet. The end.
Well, that was a nice soothing end to the Horseshoe Crab Festival. Just before we go, we have a challenge for everyone who is still with us today to see how much you all learned during the course of our presentation today. We are going to do a Kahoot quiz. So if you haven't done a Kahoot before, all you need is a smartphone, would be the best option. I think you can do it maybe from your computer as well, but if you have some kind of smartphone or tablet, you can pull that out and join along with us. We are going to, it's just a little quick 5-question quiz. So you can join us at kahoot.it. And we are going to have a pin for you in just a moment. There's the pin up there. 807-1593. And so you can put that pin into, once you go to kahoot.it, it'll ask you for the pin and you can just put that in there and join us in the Kahoot, and we can see how much you have learned today. Let's see. I'm gonna wait for some people to join. All right, we have one taker. One taker today. We got another one. All right, thank you all for joining along. Limulus fan, Mina, any other takers today? If you don't have a device with you, if you don't have a smartphone or somewhere else that you can play, you can still play along at home. You can shout the answers out at your screen. You can, write them down for yourself, I guess, and join us that way. Okay. All right, let's get started since we running out of a little time here. All right, and if anyone else wants to join us, I'm going to put the pin in the chat right now in case anyone wants to join us after we've navigated away from this screen. Good, we have a few more folks. All right, okay, let's get started. And so if you haven't done a Kahoot before, just know it gives you points based on getting a right answer, but it also gives you points based on speed. So do your best to be speedy. And here we go. Oh, first question. Sorry about that. Okay, this shorebird migrates from Argentina to the Arctic every year and depends on horseshoe crab eggs. Which shorebird is this? So we learned that a lot of shorebirds depend on horseshoe crab eggs, but which one's in this photo that we see right here? We have a few different options. Which one do we think it is? Ready turnstone, red knot, dunlin, or a semi-palmated sandpiper? I don't know if this is tricky or not. Most of you got it right. Good job. So that it was a red knot. Let's see how we're doing here. Okay, so MNE in the top spot. Next question. The Atlantic horseshoe crab is most closely related to a ladybug, a sea slug, a scorpion, or a spider crab. What do we think? See, and it's a scorpion. That's a little tricky. That might have been a guessing one, but yeah, you might think it would be related to another crab, but actually more closely related to a scorpion. Okay, how are we doing now? M&E still at the top. Okay, let's see. Horseshoe crab blood is which color? Oh, and we made it tricky too. We didn't put the name of the color with the actual answer color. So, but what color is horseshoe crab blood? This is something Caitlin talked about a little bit. All right, yes, and horseshoe crab blood is blue. They have the blue bloods, I guess you could say. All right, M&E is really at the top spot. Let's see. This is our fourth question. True or false? Male horseshoe crabs are bigger than female horseshoe crabs. What do we think? We've seen a lot of both today. Yeah, that's false. The males are the kind of smaller ones, and you have the big females, and you know when they mate, well, we've seen kind of all the males kind of around the one big female. All right, let's see where we are. M&E still at the top spot. And our last question today: horseshoe crab populations are vulnerable because of harvesting for bait, biomedical use, climate change, or all of the above. What do we think? Yeah, that was a quick one on the time. Sorry about that, everyone. Yeah, that was all of the above. So they those poor guys, they have a lot that they are facing. Let's see. MTB in third place. Mike in second place. And M&E in our top spot again. All right. Thank you everyone for playing along with us. I always think it's fun to just try that out and see, you know, what we learned over the course of a presentation. Thank you all for joining us today for this virtual festival. Thank you also to our partners who helped make this festival possible: the National Park Service, American Littoral Society, Jamaica Bay Rockaway Parks Conservancy, and the New York Aquarium. You can visit nycaudubon.org to find out more about future events, things we have going on. And yeah, hopefully we will see you soon at some of our upcoming virtual events, or maybe in person someday soon also. We hope to see you all quite soon, and thank you all for joining us today. Take care. Bye, everyone.